What's going on, everybody? Welcome in or welcome back. Peep the rebrand. Today I'm bringing you guys another Warframe build video, this time for a new frame. This one is Dagath. Dagath is the newest Warframe added to the arsenal and an absolutely amazing addition, if I do say so myself. I've had a ton of fun playing with her for the past 2 weeks, messing around with different build options and in different ways that you can play her. There's a lot of different things that go into this kit, so I'm going to go over that briefly. I'll put timestamps so that you guys can go right to the build and build options if you so choose. There's two here. We're going to be going through a health tanking and a shield gating build. That way you get a little bit of each, and if you want to go for more endurance or more long-term missions, you have that option. And if you want to do something more that's just going to survive on just any basic mission, you have that too. Both have their strengths, both have their weaknesses, but we'll get right into what her kit does. So I think the best place to start is probably going to be with her 3, Grave Spirit. Grave Spirit gives you a crit damage bonus, which is really strong. It's going to allow you to do more crit damage and double that crit damage bonus against any targets under the effect of her 2, Doom. We'll get to that in a second. The other thing that you get is a deathless state whenever your health reaches 0. When you reach that deathless state, like I just did here, you cannot die, you cannot take damage, you are completely invincible for at base 10 seconds. That duration does scale up with duration mods. Every kill you get does generate a health orb as well, as you can see, and that stacks up with Fracture Blast, which I have subsumed on here too. So you can just see tons of health orbs on the ground, which are going to keep her nice and healthy. It synergizes well with her passive, which is a 35% chance to trigger a 300% bonus effect on health or energy orbs. So it's like Energize, but in a form that also affects health. It's really cool. It allows her to reposition during that invulnerability if she's in a bad place, or she can just play really aggressively, get kills, and make whatever she's at a safe place to be. That goes on cooldown for 25 seconds whenever it triggers. So when that does happen, you'll have to make sure you get into a place that is going to be safe for that 25 seconds, but usually your energy will be back, your health will be back, and you'll be in a really solid place to wait that 25 seconds, re-trigger it, and then you get your crit damage back. Dagath 2 is called Doom. Doom allows you to store up a set amount of damage. At base, it is 35% for a redirection effect. What that's going to do is it's going to cause the damage to re-trigger. You can see the scythes over top of enemies' heads at the amount that that redirection is. So if over a period of time you deal 100 damage to an enemy at 35%, 3 seconds later, you will deal 35 more damage. This gets really crazy when you get up 286% power strength because it puts your redirection at 100%, effectively cutting enemy health in half. As soon as you hit that 50% of their health done in damage, the execute will trigger. It doesn't have to happen at the 3-second mark, it can happen whenever, and what that's going to do is automatically kill whatever enemy is doomed. This doesn't work on acolytes fully, and it doesn't work on anything with that damage mitigation piece to it, but any basic enemies, and including Eximus. One interesting thing on this is that an Eximus shield, the overguard that they have over their health before you can affect them with abilities, does actually count for a full amount of their health. So if you trigger Doom on an enemy before you've done any damage to them, and then deal that entire shield worth of health, it will instantly execute them from that point. You can see it happen a lot if you pay attention on some of these Eximus here. It's really, really strong. It does stack with things like Roar if you did want to subsume on Roar, but the execute threshold doesn't change. So the one thing with that is that the 3-second damage will be what's affected by Roar, not necessarily the execute threshold. However, your own personal damage stacks with Roar, so you will hit that execute threshold a little bit faster. Dagath's 1 is the ability you're going to see me spamming a lot here, which is actually Weird Scythes. Weird Scythes has a base 35% slow, stacks up to a total of 95% slow, which is really strong, and it does have innate punch through. So the scythes will come around her initially, just like Aqua Blades from Ureli, except Dagath will actually throw the Weird Scythes out to enemies, and again, it does have that innate punch through. It also will stack up viral on enemies that she throws it to. The cool thing with this is that you can stack up 10 viral procs if an enemy's right in front of you. And what that's going to do is actually allow you to do 325% damage at 10 viral procs. That does stack with Doom, so it will also work with the Doom Execute. The cool thing with that is that it effectively cuts an enemy's HP to 15.4%. It's very strong, it's very cool, It works really well, and it ends up creating a lot of synergy with just about any weapon you want. If you wanted to turn your Dagath into a really, really fun weapon platform, it'll also trigger those executes, so she gets tons of ability kills if that's the type of frame you like to play. Dagath 4 wasn't actually featured in the build that I was showing, so I actually swapped over to the Simulacrum to be able to show you this. By itself, it offers a large amount of damage and the ability to strip armor from doomed enemies. Those are enemies affected by her too. The ability also triggers multiple instances of damage in the location it's cast before it moves forward, following the terrain in front of you. It'll strip enemy defenses as you apply the damage, making it really, really good to nuke even high-level packs of enemies like you can see here. It's also a brief invulnerability frame, so it's really, really nice to trigger when things get a little too spicy, or as you're seeing here on the shield gating build, combining with rolling guard and just shield gating in general, becomes really, really nice. When you factor all of that together with her ability to trigger viral, it makes it really, really nice to nuke enemies, but it's also the ability that I think the energy cost just makes it a little hard to sustain sometimes, so it's probably the ability you would want to take off if you're looking for a subsumed target. So going right into the build, this is the one that you guys saw on that Steel Path mod. I'm using Fractured Blast for this build. It synergizes really well with her passive of that 35% chance to get 300% bonus value on orbs, but you're also going to use 2 red Archons, 2 yellow Archons, and 1 Tau-Forged Blue. The Tau-Forged Blue is completely excess. It just brings your damage reduction from armor at base up from about 33% to 53%. That extra 20% just seemed like good value to me. These are the 2 main ones that I would recommend though, are these cast speed. Just to give you a free natural talent, it allows her to get out of her animations a lot faster. For the weapons, I like the Miter for the ability to pop nullifier bubbles using Neutralizing Justice. Here's the build for that. The Riven is just multi-shot crit chance and minus reload speed. This is my Spore Lacer. It's Spore Lacer Splat Haymaker, just for a little bit AoE damage. And then really on the melee, you can use whatever you want. If you wanted to use the Doraclave, it works really well with Dagath for the ability to heal, works well with a health tanking build, and I run it with Healing Return with a really, really scuffed build here, but it's a lot of fun. It just ends up being a big stat stick that you amplify the crit damage out the wazoo for. All that synergizes together with this build here, which is an Umbral Intensify Umbral Vitality that does need that Umbral mod, but I'll show you another setup on the shield tanking build, shield gating build, that will function the same way, but you don't need an Umbral mod. You can also run health conversion here. It's going to give you a lot of extra armor. You want to drop flow on this build, you absolutely can. And then in its place, run adaptation. You'll be a lot tankier. And then if you don't want to run Molt Augmented, if you don't have Molt Augmented and you really want to hit that extra doom for the redirection being up a little bit higher, you will need at least 1 Archon Shard for that red 10%, but then you can run Augur Secrets here instead. Any aura mod will work on this build though. Molt Augmented is really just to get us up to that extra strength that we want while keeping our stretch, but you can drop it and run a build more like this with Reconstruct and Blessing. Keep in mind that the main thing I'm trying to do here is not show you guys Reaper. Reaper's a little expensive right now, so I'm trying not to recommend it to you guys, but this is essentially functioning as the same thing. You're getting Blessing and you're getting the extra health whenever you heal off of an ability. So that's going to be pretty good, but you could just run Reaper instead of Reconstruct here, and it's going to give you a similar thing. You'll just have to make sure you're getting those melee kills when you need them. Again, this is using Augur Secrets. I am using Roar on this subsume. This is for a little bit of team utility. Also, you're going to amplify those 3-second procs on Doom and your overall damage so you can hit those executes a little bit faster. Growing Power, just make sure you grow in power before you roar. Prime Sure-Footed, as always, replace with Handspring if you need to. And if you really, really need to, you could always take out Prime Flow for Constitution and then also run a Handspring. So you're at 200%. It'll make you feel a little bit more survivable. This one's a Breach Surge subsume. You knew there was going to be one energized with that because Breach Surge functions as a bit of its own defensive mod. So you can run with the blind there. You don't really need the range on this build, so your Doom is going to be a little bit shorter to reach, and it won't propagate as far from weird sites, but the Breach Surge is 18 meters, and you're pretty much fine with that. Instead of Reconstruct, if you want to run Reaper, it's a really good option here. You could also run the Reconstruct, you could run Blessing, there's a lot of different options, and again, if you don't feel like you need the Prime Flow, though I do recommend it here, you could take that out, swap it with a D Polarity, and run your Adaptation. For For this build, this is the Thorough Strike. It's the one I recommend for Disruption. Thorough Strike will full strip armor so that those targets become really, really easy to deal with. You can instead use her 4 and leave no subsume on, but that does tend to leave you with a little bit of a hefty cost, and that can be hard to do, especially if you're solo. Reconstruct Guardian, really you could just run Reaper and get the same effect here, and then run Blessing as your second, but Guardian gives you 900 armor, Reconstruct gives you a heal. Together this functions as a similar thing to Reaper if you don't necessarily have Reaper or you don't want to pay for it. Again, Prime Shift Footed, you guys already know. The other option is you could go with a Nourish. I don't like Nourish. I think you're just excess energy and excess viral damage. I don't think it's super needed. So the first thing you'll notice about the shield gating build is that I do have some pretty intimidating Archon shards. Just know you don't need these. They're completely excessive and definitely not something you need to run. The only thing you really want here is the free natural talent from 2 regular yellow shards. That's going to be it. If you wanted to run something like this, you absolutely can. I think she's worth it, but you don't need it. Going into her build, I do really obviously recommend Brief Respite. If you're running the shield gating build, you don't even need to Forma that Aura Polarity. You're going to go Catalyzing Shields, just to drop her shields as low as possible so that Weird Sides is going to be able to shield gate with 1 cast just using Brief Respite. Rolling Guard is also a really good option just for some extra survivability. Every 7 seconds you can get 3 invulnerability. It's pretty good. The rest of this is all just letting you do the build in and of itself. Prime Sure Footed, swap it out for Handspraying if you don't have Prime Sure Footed. You can also swap Stretch out in that case for Constitution for a 200% faster recovery. You get a little bit stronger duration on your death passive, as well as a Doom that's going to last a little bit longer, and more duration for whatever you decide to subsume on for her 4, or a longer range 4. The best part about the shield gating build is that you do get 2 arcane slots pretty much free. The reason that's free is because your survivability is already taken care of in shield gating, and then rolling guard. So with that free, you can use Molt Augmented, you could use Avenger, you could use Strike. Pretty much anything becomes an option, though I do recommend running Energize if you can get it, simply because Energize does allow you to keep casting without the potential risk of running out of energy, especially if you subsume off her 4. The only time you ever tend to run out of energy on this build is when you use her 4 and it just happens to not generate enough health orbs for the kills that you got, or energy orbs. You're running Equilibrium just to help with that a little bit too. Flow I do recommend keeping for this build, especially because you don't really need anything else. If you do take off Molt Augmented, you will end up needing the extra from some of these shards, but you really only need 2 Tau Forged and 1 regular red. If you decide to run this build, you can still health tank with it for maybe lower level missions or faster missions. Maybe you want to turn your brain off a little bit. That one would go with Adaptation and Transient Fortitude, with health conversion being another option. This does, however, mean that you really need to run Blessing just to make sure your health stays high enough for a good enough cushion. And then either Molt Reconstruct, Arcane Guardian, or Arcane Reaper. Any of those are really good options on this build just to keep you nice and tanky and able to continue through the mission. Again, subsume whatever you want on here. You could run anything really. Her 4 is a great ability, really thematic, but I think long term, you're either going to want to run something like Breach Search, Pillage, Thorough Strike, or potentially even running something like Nourish, although I don't really care for it. I know a lot of people do like it. I think it's a little overkill for the energy for her kit. So it's not one that I would recommend, but it does end up being pretty cool. There is one really interesting thing that I could talk about in a future build with Reeve. Maybe you want to stop by a stream and ask me about that one. Pretty cool. Maybe we'll go over it another time. Going into the pets, we do have a lot of different options, and any of them work just as well as another. For health tanking, Vulpaphyla is just by large the king for that. That's just going to be because Hunter Recovery in an AoE with Viral Quills is just too strong. You can also run Restorative Bond for keeping it up really easily, especially with Synth Deconstruct, dropping more orbs. Link Vitality, if you want to drop the Primed Animal Instinct, run the Link Fiber, and then Bite and Tenacious Bond combine on any Kavat and your Vulpaphyla to give you the free 1.2 times final crit multiplier, which is cool. You can run a similar build idea with your Smita and also get the loot chance increase. You can run the standard Helios build and get your armor strip if you wanted to do that. I don't recommend it because you don't really need it, but it is an option. You can run Death Cube and just generate tons of energy. It's really, really good on the shield gating build just to make sure that you're always topped off. You can run an Adarza Kavat as well, just to get yourself a little bit of extra critting. Or you can run a Nautilus for some grouping, though that one tends to be a little scary when it starts pulling your nullifiers towards you, so that one I don't usually recommend. If you're looking for a focus school recommendation, it's going to be Zenuric for the shield gating build. It just helps you make sure that you're not running out of energy since you are a shield gating build that's requiring brief respite. The worst thing that could happen is you run out of energy and can't shield gate. You do get a little bit of freedom through the Grave Spirit passive as well as Rolling Guard, but just in case, worst case scenario, Zenuric prepares you for that. Alternatively, Naramon's obviously a good option, Matarai's a great option, Bazarin's a great option, and all of those also work on the health tanking build as well. Really run it as freely as you want. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that Zenuric has an Innermite passive that does give you a free cast, which is going to mean you won't shield gate sometimes when you really need it. So keep that in mind and make sure you play around it. Sometimes you'll trigger your Grave Spirit passive just because your shield gating didn't trigger when you really hoped that it would. So that's one thing to play around with your focus schools. So that brings us to the end of this Dagath build showcase and the overview of Dagath. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys like this build, and if you check it out yourself, if you have requests, things you maybe do differently, suggestions, whatever that might be, please leave them in the comments below or come to a stream, twitch.tv/justhaley, and we'll come hang out, we'll test everything out, and we'll have some fun together. I hope you guys liked this. I had a ton of fun playing with her the past 2 weeks to put this together, and really just experimenting with a lot of different things. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, she's one of the most varied frames with so many different things you can do, so much potential in her kit, and I really recommend giving her a shot. If you haven't, check her out, build her up, and see what you think. She can do a lot of things in the game. She can health tank, she can shield gate, she can, feature her abilities really well. She can even be a weapon platform if you wanted to do that, and I just think that overall versatility makes her one of the best frames in the game to play, and one of my favorite. She's also a pretty easy frame to farm, which is really cool too, because it means that you can get her, as long as someone has standing maybe that you can get her building and going pretty quickly. You don't necessarily need all of the leveled up mods. If you don't have primes, go for the regulars, right? But she's a really, really cool frame with so much variability in how she can play. It just makes her a lot of fun. That's it for this video though. Thank you for hanging with me. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Until then, stay cute.